I was looking at this thing that's above me. I was like, is that a bottle of hot sauce that I put up there? Because it's not. It's like a Swedish horse, one of those orange kind of Swedish horses. But I was looking at it and I was like, did I really put hot sauce up there? That's crazy.
I love it. I feel like you always have to have something behind you on a shelf to make it a little interesting. So I appreciate it. I kind of wish it was hot sauce. That would be really fun.
Welcome back to the Commerce Collective podcast brought to you by Flywheel. It's a new year, but I am still your host, Emma Irwin, and I am excited to bring back our most popular episode of 2024, which was our digital commerce trends and predictions for the year. And today, of course, we're coming at you with our version for 2025. Exciting. I have a special repeat guest here to join me today, and we're going to break this episode down into 4 key themes based off of our lovely Retail Insight team's digital commerce trends to look out for in 2025 report. Those being supply chain transformation, social commerce, retail media, and AI. Without further ado, let's re-meet our guest.
Nice to see you again, Emma. So my name is Hannah Donoghue. I'm our SVP of Consulting here at Flywheel. I lead our consulting, custom client analytics, and retail insights team. So very lucky to be able to do that and work with some fantastic people.
Beautiful. And I'm curious, over the last 2 years, how has your role evolved? If that's even a question that's possible to answer.
Well, as of recently, I've had the pleasure of now getting to work with our retail and custom client analytics teams. So it's been really great because all of us are working to deliver thought leadership and differentiated insights and analytics for our clients. And so now getting to bring the teams together and work more holistically has just been a really cool experience. So I'd say that's probably the biggest change. And then from a consulting side, we're always talking with clients about the next solution, the next challenge. And so that shapes what I'm doing at all times. So, and then obviously, the business has changed quite a bit over 2 years. And with that, so that comes some changes as well, but all really good.
Amazing. Okay. My last question before we really get into what we actually showed up here for is, of course, you remember this one. I want to know the last thing that you did actually purchase online. And you should have all kinds of stuff. You've got young kids. We just went through a holiday season. I'm curious what your pick is here.
Oh gosh, there's so many things. But I would say as of yesterday, my last thing, so one of my kids' favorite pajama sites or pajama brands that I buy for them had their semi-annual sale. And for them, it is actually a semi-annual sale. It's not the hey, we're 50% off every other week or every other day. They actually limit it to certain times of the year. And it's magnetic PJs. And so if you've ever had to change a kid in the middle of the night or at 2 a.m., the snaps are not your friends. And so magnets are a life-changing thing. And so when those go on sale, I buy them up.
Amazing. Who would have thought? I love innovative clothing design.
Yeah,
keep the evolution going. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's perfect. Genius. Whoever thought of that, they're my favorite human. Yeah.
Because this is the first episode of the year, I wanted to let Hannah take a moment to call out what was most interesting to her out of everything that happened last year, because that concept probably carries into this year as well. Doesn't hurt to reflect a bit, even though we are 2 weeks into the new year, and you probably did most of your reflecting in that abyss that are the days between Christmas and New Year's.
I think for me, one of the things that was most exciting was just how quickly social commerce accelerated. Obviously, we've seen social commerce for many years. It's something that is widespread in Asia in particular. But I think you really saw that trajectory shift and make a marked difference in 2024, where it really did start to become more seamless. Now, is there still a long way to go in the US? Yes, there is. Are there a lot of questions about it? Yes, there are, and we'll talk about them. But I think for me, that was one of the biggest things. If I look back and say what was really cool this past year, it would be that.
Would you say that aligns with, let's say you had to look at the things that we predicted would happen last year? Would you say that one is the one that we think we got the most correct, or is it something else or anything else that even surprised you? I'm kind of curious, just reflecting upon what we said was going to happen last year and what actually happened.
Yeah. Before we hopped on, I went and listened back for fun to what we said last year and what our team said. And I think it did align, but the one that I actually thought was closest to what we said was more around some of our omnichannel predictions. It was really clear this year that a lot of the omnichannel retailers were really leveraging their stores as digital assets more than they ever have and putting a lot of innovation there. And so I think what the team was talking about was probably the most spot on, but we did talk about social as well.
For sure. And I think, like you said, with everything that changed with social within the last year, like it's impossible to completely predict things 100%. This industry just moves incredibly fast. But hey, in the next 4 segments, we're going to try our absolute best to get brands and retailers and anyone that listens ready for what's coming.
And now we can get into what you came here for, which are our predictions for what will shape commerce in 2025. And again, these come straight out of the report from our Retail Insights team, which you should totally subscribe to. So please reach out to Hannah or me if you want to learn more. All right, up first is supply chain transformation. Let's get into it.
The Retail Insights team highlighted 2 specific trends to look out for here, which are that new trade and tariff controls will shape retailer strategies, and then automated fulfillment and regionalized distribution will drive new opportunity. A lot of words. I'm impressed. When I was practicing this a few minutes ago, I did not get through that sentence flawlessly, but I'm glad that I did.
Nailed it.
Okay, I'm going to have you, before we cover, and maybe you'll touch on those 2 things, but like, I'm curious your personal human, not report hot takes on supply chain transformation for 2025. And then we can dig into those 2 very specific ones.
Yeah, I think every year supply chain is advancing more and more. When I think back, years ago when we were obviously working in this industry, supply chain was viewed more as a cost center, and it was a really, really siloed function. And so now that has fundamentally shifted, in particular with e-commerce, further accelerated by COVID. I think what we saw really clearly is that e-commerce is a differentiator of who's going to win and who will lose. And so those retailers and brands that were able to bring supply chain into every conversation, everything that they were doing, every decision that they were making, all of a sudden they were really shining. And I think that's only going to continue, but that's not something new. I think when you talk about automated fulfillment, there's a lot of pressure on supply chain. If you think about e-commerce, again, this isn't new, but think about what you and I used to do as work for shopping. If I go into the store, I pick the product off of the shelf, I check out and I take it home and I sort of pack it all away. I'm doing that work. Now, obviously through e-commerce, ship from home, retailers have taken on that work for themselves. That drives cost pressures, that drives more complexity. And so over the years, there's been more of a need to figure out, what can you automate? How can you get closer to the end consumer? So what we're seeing this year, we expect further acceleration in automated or autonomous fulfillment for a variety of reasons. One, you're starting to see more adoption. As adoption grows, cost pressures can come down. And so you'll see that ramp up more and more. There's a lot of players that are investing heavily in this. And then on the tariffs front, what I would say is, well, we can talk about this in more detail, but I think it just introduces a lot of uncertainty into the system, and it's going to require a lot more of agility for our retailer and brand partners in how they navigate, in how they source, and really how their end-to-end supply chain runs.
On the trade and tariffs front, I've had a feeling the word agility was going to come up. So my question for you on that one is, like, we can tell brands and even retailers to, you got to be agile, but can you actually put that into a concrete example? How do brands actually prepare and then be agile when it comes to things like that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's a great question. So I think there's a couple things. So one, from a tariff standpoint, just to say this, you use one of the Retail Insights frameworks all the time, or we do, which is our STEEP framework. It's sort of a cornerstone of Retail Insights. And within STEEP, the P is for policy. And so policy is always going to be a biggest driver of change. That's not new. Within the tariffs right now, and yes, it's going to drive agility. So to your point, what does that actually mean for retailers and brands? It means things like reevaluating sourcing partners and where you are sourcing from. So you might see more nearshore sourcing. You might see more diversifying of sourcing into other countries that the tariffs may not apply to. You're going to see things like, I would imagine grocers will push more towards local produce or local products to make that supply chain agility a little bit easier. Now that has implications for brands that they need to think about how they're delivering against that. And then the other thing I would say is you will probably see brands need to think about, obviously, pricing strategy. Pricing's at the sole discretion of the retailer, but they'll need to be thinking about what that looks like, how they may manage their own costs so that all of those pressures don't go on to the end consumer. And then I think the other thing you'll see is Probably more streamlining of assortments, particularly for value retailers, because they're just going to be trying to manage this complexity and also manage where they're getting products from. So brands need to be really thoughtful about where they want to show up to.
I'm curious in terms of regionalized distribution, and you mentioned the word produce, so I'm going to play off of produce and just say, like, let's say I am a tomato grower in Canada, which sounds crazy, but the tomatoes that I usually buy say they're grown in Canada, which is where this is coming from. But I'm curious, like, does that mean as retailers try and automate supply chain, make it faster, get to the end consumer faster, that like is all hope lost for me, the Canadian tomato farmer brand that sends all of my tomatoes to pretty much every state in the US, and because retailers are going to favor the more localized options? Like I'm kind of thinking of those produce like avocados from Mexico. Do we think that that's going to kind of trickle out?
No, those are a favorite in our household.
Yes.
No, I don't think so. And look, there's still a ton of uncertainty about actually will happen with tariffs between what's being said and then what will actually be happening. And there are always going to be consumers who will still pay that additional money for products if they are, if prices do inevitably go up with some of these tariffs if they go into place.
Got it. My last question for you on the supply chain transformation topic is, low-cost marketplaces and the Chinese entrance into the Western market have been a major point of conversation the past year. And I believe like the Temu and Shein are from late 2022, give or take. Temu definitely is close enough. But I'm curious in terms of, I think like supply chain is such a huge part of the business models of both of those different. Yeah. And so what do you think is going to happen in that space? And I know this again goes down to trade and tariff and all of these different policies that come out, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah. So what's super interesting there is, especially as you like link the trade and tariff conversations, is so a lot of these players are actually, they use what's called the de minimis law in the US, which means that, if you are shipping something that's in the US, it's under $800 to an individual end consumer, you are not subject to those same tariffs. And so for them, that's actually a benefit because they can still get those things at the lower price for those consumers that are willing to wait for the longer time. What's ironic is that, de minimis is from a sort of a Latin phrase, which is sort of minimal consequence or I don't want to say minimal importance, but it's not worth counting. But what's ironic is that the latest figures are something like over the past year, something like 1.5 or 1.6 billion shipments are coming into the US using that law. There's all different figures, but there's stats that up to 50% of those could be coming from Shein and Temu and players like that. So, what was a law that was meant to be of, little consequence all of a sudden is a big way that these players can actually use that as their advantage. So that's one. The other thing from a supply chain standpoint where they do excel is actually in their sort of on-demand production. They are really good and really strong at digitizing their supply chain and giving that data to their supplier partners so that they can better manage demand, better do more faster, rapid production. I think it's something like one of them took production from 3 weeks down to 5 days, something like that. And so they can get these tighter turnaround times where they're managing sort of small batch order quantities to test. And then once they see it work out, then all of a sudden they are, expanding that for the demand. So I think that's where their supply chain strength actually comes from, is in that sort of data-driven on-demand production and fulfillment.
Supply chain, prepare to be transformed. Our next topic to cover is one of my favorites, social commerce. I asked Hannah for what she expects to change in social commerce in the next year. And it's a bit of an unfair question in that we don't entirely know what will happen with that one really big platform that starts with a T. But, we got to be prepared for anything.
I love scenario planning. So here we go with that. So in the scenario that everything stays together, again, one scenario, in 2025, we would forecast that, again, provided everything stays together, ByteDance would actually break into the top 5 retailers globally ranked by total sales, which is wild to think about where they came from all the scale of the retailers that exist today, to have them make that jump is crazy. By 2029, again, there's a lot of caveats with the bans and everything there. But if it stayed as is, we would expect that they'd actually break into the top 3, which again is just crazy to fathom. Now, obviously, there's a lot of conversations around a potential ban or divesting to a different owner. And so that does introduce some uncertainty. But for now, TikTok is very much operational, and we see a lot of potential and growth within that. And, should a new owner end up rolling that way, again, I think there's just massive amounts of potential with TikTok Shop and the innovation that we've already seen there to date.
For sure. And I'm, of course, going to ask you, how do brands continue to prepare for this? I'd say, if you're a brand and you don't have some kind of TikTok presence, you're kind of already behind. But in terms of the growth of what we hope to be in terms of TikTok Shop, I'm curious, obviously we say every brand should be working with a partner like Flywheel, of course. But in reality, should every brand have a social commerce kind of partner? Should they be rapidly hiring a team of people that know a lot about social commerce? What's your advice there?
Yeah, look, I think it's still a little bit in a test and learn mindset, but I think brands need to be testing and learning. I think a lot of brands get a little nervous on brand integrity or defending their brand and all of that. Obviously, you need to do it in a thoughtful way. I'm not trying to negate that, but those that are willing to test and learn in a thoughtful way, I think it will be really beneficial to them. I think they need to strike a balance between internal leadership and expertise in the space and also finding the right partner. You want to have people internally that are experienced commerce professionals that have that marketing lens that can sort of bring commerce and media and the execution of this, especially, again, having that marketing lens all together. That's essential. But collaborating is key. And there is a lot of complexity in this space. And so I do think it is important for brands to partner with an agency or so, to work on and figure out, how do they manage this? How do they find the right influencer partners and someone that can actually distill a social commerce strategy into measurable outcomes? That's the really important part, is understanding not just as a marketing opportunity or something like that, but how do you link it to measurable commerce outcomes? And I think, that's been one thing that the Flywheel team has done a really nice job on thus far, and I'm really excited about. So that's where I would say partners can come into play and can be very advantageous to the brands that are willing to do that.
Gotcha. Okay. I'm curious when we look at this from the retailer perspective, I'm curious your thoughts on, do you think that, assuming TikTok gets to see many more days in the United States of America, do you think that retailers are just going to really just lean into TikTok? Or do you think there's still going to be these retailers that try and build out their own kind of social commerce presence? We know Amazon has for years been trying Amazon Live, and has that really taken off? Not exactly. I'm curious, will YouTube come in? YouTube's not a retailer, but how did they end up so far behind? Point of the question being just, do you think retailers are going to try and overrun TikTok with their own options, or everyone's going to go ham on TikTok?
Yeah, I think whether it's TikTok or Instagram or whatever, I think, they have such, in particular TikTok, they have a lead already in it. They have capabilities, they have influencer partners. And so it just becomes a balancing act of how quickly if you're a retailer going at it alone, how quickly do you want to do that? How much investment would it take versus partnering with the right one? It's sort of the quintessential buy, build, partner question. I would say you'll see more partnerships come into play just because of the audience scale that they have and the commerce measurement capabilities that these players are building in. I think that's where, for those that can really seamlessly integrate media marketing and commerce, it is probably more beneficial to, partner than necessarily build your own, because that's where the consumers are. And so if you're coming with a consumer first mindset, which all the best retailers do, you go where the consumer is. And right now the consumer is on those platforms.
Retail media is our next talking point. Of course, how could it not be? And I think feels impossible to fully cover, but we're gonna try our darndest for the things that happen in the coming year. And so highlighting what the Retail Insights team has put together in terms of 2 predictions related to retail media, it's that retail media will unite upper and lower funnel and accelerate organizational integration, and retailers will Oh, I was so close. And retailers will harness clean rooms to guide investments and improve media effectiveness. We have those, but first up, I'll give you the same kind of prompt as prior in that, like, what's your human take that's not necessarily in the report or in the report in terms of where retail media is going?
Yeah, I mean, so look, you hit the nail on the head. Trying to boil retail media down to one or two things is just a futile effort. Like, I'm not even going to try. And we will, like within Retail Insights, we'll be doing pieces that dig more into just retail media specifically. But since you and I aren't able to talk on this podcast for a half a day, I'll try and just hit on a couple things of what we're thinking about. So first, we do think retail media, as it continues to advance, as it continues to mature, there is opportunity more and more to unite upper and lower funnel. So we can talk about that. But I think that's one of the biggest things there. The other thing is that with clean rooms, because of the vast amounts of data that clean rooms now provide brands access to, they have more visibility of the consumer and the different touch points across the funnel. And they're understanding more and more the need for multi-touch strategies and multi-touch attribution. And so I think you're going to see that play a bigger role in the year ahead, and as more and more data opens up. And then I think I was listening, I love your monthly podcast with Patrick, and I was listening to that as I was sort of closing the year out. And what I loved that he was talking about was how, it's all about how we connect what happens at the top of funnel with actually SKUs and ASINs. So bringing together everything all the way down to the end to commerce and connecting that sort of upper level ad strategy with retail and commerce execution. I thought he hit the nail on the head, as he always does, but I thought that really spoke to where we see retail media going. The other thing I would just call out from a retail media side, if I were to hit on a couple of key things, is I do think there will be a lot of pressure or movement around org design and org structure. Because with retail media in particular, it brings up a lot of questions around who owns it? How do you connect it? Whose budget does it sit under? How does it show up on the P&L? We could go on forever about that. But in a lot of the conversations that we're having with our clients, it is bringing up a lot of conversations about, do they need to rethink their org design and their org structure over the next sort of, call it 18 to 24 months, to respond to these and to respond to the needs and to be able to manage retail media in a more effective way. Also, again, this has been going on for a little bit, but you think about the role retail media will play in conversations and JBPs between retailers and brands. Those dynamics have completely shifted with retail media networks and everything there. So I think that's only going to further accelerate as well.
I see. Okay, I'm curious. In terms of uniting upper and lower funnel, how does that actually happen? Is that kind of advancements in terms of retail, the different networks, their reporting capabilities? Does that all tie to clean rooms? Like, how do we actually unite the things?
Yeah. So as retail media is evolving, it is pushing further up the funnel. So that's first. And so I think it's really about the ability to utilize the data that, to what you said, that clean rooms that the retail media networks or RMNs have, and start to pair that back with the larger data sets that either we have or that our brand partners give us access to, their own 1P data. And that allows us to see further up the funnel. With that, we want to see how many consumers are at every stage of the funnel. How quickly are they moving down it? And more importantly, what's their sort of long-term value for the brand? And so with those insights, we're able to better see sort of, again, that uniting and sort of end-to-end view. And so to your point on retail media networks as well, they're equally pushing this sort of full funnel view, full funnel tracking, full funnel measurement within their own capability suite. But just to be clear, there is still a lot of work to be done here. It's not like this is endgame, we're already there, but there's a lot of really cool innovation in this space. I love what Flywheel's been doing here in particular, and I think we're going to see a lot of continued progress on it this year.
Amazing. Okay, my last question on retail media is that I think, like, in terms of clean rooms, something I'm super excited to see as we continue to kind of dig in is clean rooms going beyond just media. How do you use, at this exact moment, like, how do you use AMC to dig into retail specific insights and different consumer behaviors that tie back to like promotional strategies, etc.? I'm curious for your thoughts on how we see clean rooms guiding strategies beyond traditional media.
Yeah. So first, I think we should expect to see that more retail media networks will open up clean rooms. Now, the value of each of them, is that all created equal? No, probably not. But you could argue that they all have some value in them with the data that they have. And so I think you'll start to see more and more data be released into these clean rooms because, again, that's the value is in the data that's there. As brands we're seeing brands, I know we're pushing for more and more data to be available in them because then you can, again, just make better informed decisions. What's going to be interesting is to see what's actually paid features and what's included. So that's sort of one piece of it. But what I was really excited to see, at CES, I'm just sort of particularly excited about the announcement between Flywheel and Amazon Ads on our sort of first of a kind 5-year look back purchase history. And that data now going to be available AMC. And what I think is really innovative about this is it's going to allow brands to move beyond more short-term metrics and then truly understand how a consumer is evolving. When we say long-term value, that becomes much more long-term value. Look, we're in an age where, I think about the products that I buy or the promos, buy 2, get 2, or buy 2, get 6, whatever it is. I think about that and my purchase history lags more than a year. And so if retailer or brand wants to see the reality of my shopping behavior, you need to see that more over a year. I know a year often can feel like a very long time, and in some instances it is, but getting that more holistic view is important. But then to your point on what can clean rooms guide outside of sort of just your media strategy. And again, this is not the media strategy is a massive part, super impactful. But where I get excited about it is, and what I think can often get overlooked is how it actually impacts your product or your portfolio strategy. If you can get insights through clean rooms on things like new to brand or on long-term value and understand what categories are being cross-shopped, yes, that absolutely impacts your media strategy, but it also should be influencing your assortment strategy and where do you need to innovate in your assortment? Where do you have gaps? Where should you be pushing certain areas of innovation? How should you be doing basket building strategies? That for me is really exciting because it gets into your more total or holistic go-to-market strategy. And so I think the brands that are winning are obviously leveraging it for the media tactics and media strategy, no doubt, but also thinking about it much more holistically and how it can impact their commerce go-to-market strategy.
And of course, last but not least, we are covering AI. Because it would be crazy if we didn't. Let's dig in.
What do you expect to see here in regards to AI and how it will continue to shape commerce? What's going to change? What's going to stay the same?
I mean, of course, we can't have this without talking about AI. And I think we talked about AI last year, and we probably talked about it the year before that. And we'll probably talk about it next year. But I think what I would look at this year is that you are seeing more and more retailers heavily invest in AI. You are seeing them in particular invest in, personalized shopping experiences, in leveraging AI for content creation, in thinking about how they can take repetitive manual tasks and leverage AI to drive efficiency, but then also leverage AI to analyze vast data sets and make more informed decisions. So I think you'll see more in personalized shopping experiences, more in some of the AI shopping assistants. That's a space where we are seeing retailers put more dollars towards. And I think you will see it as well on sort of the content and creative side, because it does allow you to test and learn and iterate in some meaningful ways. Again, similar to retail media, we could spend an hour on AI and all the ways it's going to influence retail. But those are some of the things that we're looking at in this year in particular. And I guess the last one, if I add a bonus one, is AI is definitely also influencing supply chain, the supply chain transformation conversation we are having. There's no doubt that will play a major role in that, especially when you think about autonomous delivery. Those sort of go hand in hand. So I'd say those are top of mind things that we're watching for.
Something I was thinking about when I was writing these questions is that, obviously, I think of, the two things that I know the most about are AI for PDP content development or kind of ad creative, etc., the creative element of things. And then also AI in search we had Walmart's AI within their search bar, and then also Amazon's Rufus. But I think I'm going to take it on the content front first. it's exciting that AI can really help simplify and speed up the process of like content development at scale. But I'm kind of curious, do you think that in terms of consumer perception, is that a risk? Like, is there any kind of diminishing return in terms of using AI for content development in the long term? And I think on the flip side, when you take it to search, I think this can be incredibly useful for consumers as those LLMs continue to learn and kind of build and be able to actually answer the questions that people want. But we talk about it day in and day out from this is how this impacts brands perspective. But like, what about consumers? I feel like that gets kind of left out of the conversation.
Yeah, I think, again, AI is still learning. So where from a consumer front, where the risk is some consumers do have concerns around data privacy. So some will think about that. Others, the other thing is not all of the AI executions are created equal. It's still a little bit in a duct tape phase. Not all of them, but some certainly. And so if they start giving strange answers to consumers or incorrect, and it actually creates more friction in the shopping experience versus making it more personalized and seamless, which is obviously the intention, then I think there's some consumer risk. But on the content front, if I'm a consumer, and again, I guess it's sort of party of one opinion, but if I'm a consumer and it makes it an easier shopping experience for me, if it summarizes a lot of ratings and reviews, and so I don't have to go in and read each of them, and I can just sort of get the quick themes, and it makes my decision-making process easier, all the better. I do think there are elements of creative and true creative that are hard to replicate through AI. I mean, is it possible in the future? I guess. But I think there are really some creative elements to content that we are nowhere near replicating today through AI. But from a consumer experience, honestly, if it is done well, the consumer might not even realize that it was AI generated. Think about how many consumers, they're on Amazon and they don't even really care to understand what the ship's from and sold by Amazon or by a third party. Like they don't know. They care about, do they have the right information there to make the right decision to get the product that they want quickly to them at the price that they're looking for. So yeah, I think if it's done well, consumers will just view it as a way to see engaging content that helps them make a more informed decision.
That makes sense. So it's something I was like, we've just never really talked about it from consumer perspective. It's always what it means for brands and retailers and everything like that. Okay. I have 2 wrap-up questions for you in our last 4 minutes of existence here. Number 1 is, of all the things we just covered, what personally makes you the most excited and why?
Clean rooms and the data around it. I mean, I'm a data nerd at heart, and you combine that with sort of the strategy element of product portfolio strategy, marketing and media strategy. That's just fun for me. So on a personal level, I think I'd lean there. And then on obviously more broadly from a business impact, I just think the data that's in clean rooms is going to really reshape the way we make decisions, the way audiences are, determined and leveraged. And so I just think there's a lot that can be done there. And so I think just both personally, I think it's fun. And then I think separate to that, I do think it's going to have a major impact on businesses going forward.
Okay. My very last question for you is, I'm bringing back the digital wish list, something that just lives in a cart and you won't actually purchase it, and why?
So this summer we were at a wedding and my whole family was there, and my 4-year-old was there, and we at the wedding, there was sort of this massive carnival-like inflatable axe throwing game. Yeah, it's random, but
love it.
But it was a blast. Like it entertained the kids, and we were outside. And so anyway, so my 4-year-old takes us and just throws it and hits sort of the bullseye. And I'm shocked because he's 4 and he's never done this before. And I'm like looking at him, I'm like, okay, that's interesting. And he loved it, and it entertained him forever. And so after the wedding, I went on Amazon. And I'm like, whoa, wow, they have the same like massive one. They have a smaller version, and I put both of them in my cart. And then, we got home and later I was like thinking about it. I'm like, do I really want that in my backyard? Like, do I really want our son like out there hucking that all the time? Do I really want to have to inflate it all the time? So it's a fun memory, but I think it's probably going to stay in my cart. And I don't think we'll ever actually buy that. We did buy a massive inflatable sort of water pool experience for him. And I think that's probably where we're going to stay with that.
Yeah, it's like, do you want to be the family that is just known on the street for all of their various massive inflatable kind of scenarios and setups that they have hanging out?
Yes. Yeah. We have lights out front, but we don't have all the inflatables on the front yard. So I think that one's going to stay in the cart for a long time. He can play on the swing set in the backyard, and he can play t-ball or whatever. That'll be just fine.
Yes. Amazing. I love it. Okay. That is going to wrap us up. We are right on time. And thank you again for your time and coming back to the show.
Thanks for inviting me. Fun to chat as always.
And that wraps up our first episode of the Commerce Collective podcast in 2025. Thank you to Hannah and our Retail Insights team for pulling together what's going to shape commerce in 2025 so that we can all get ahead and prepare. And reach out if you're interested in accessing the report for all of the insights we didn't get to cover in these past 40 minutes, alongside all of the other really incredible reports and content that the Retail Insights team puts out. I have been your host, Emma Irwin, and we will see you next time.